Yellorukkum Vanakkam. Thank you so much, India Today Conclave South, for having varying voices. And this is true democracy, to have a voice like mine as well on a women's panel, because that's been the journey to find my woman, to be a woman and to find that womanhood. I think empowerment to me is to find that voice and to courageously kind of, go that path. And I didn't have a godfather. It was tough, but I did it on my own terms. And I think every woman has that capacity within her to fight harder and to focus and find her meaningful place. So to me, empowerment is to kind of find that voice and voice it courageously.
Ms. Thamizhachi Thangapandian, that question to you. You know, what I noticed as soon as I met you was your sari. I'm not sure if all the members in the audience also seen this. Her sari has the picture of Bhartiyar. Bhartiyar, a legendary Tamil poet, always stood for empowerment, for equality. He always spoke up about it also very vociferously. I also want to add here that Ms. Thamizhachi is my MP, and it's with great pride that, I have a woman who's representing my constituency. But that question to you, what is empowerment to you?
Vanakkam. A very good morning to all of you and my dear panelists and my dear friends and the lovely sweet anchor also. See, as you said, the motif sari which I chose to wear today speaks about, in 2 sentences, what is empowerment. Aanukkinge pengal ilaipinlai kaan endru kummiyadi. But for me, empowerment is breaking the patriarchal thinking of men and the patriarchy setup. I would like to just share 3 important quotes, if you don't mind, because we always associate Aristotle, Pythagoras, Thomas Aquinas as great thinkers, but look at the way the patriarchal mind works in them. Aristotle says, also as regards male and female, the former is superior, the latter is inferior. The male is the ruler, the female is subject. What if Aristotle may be the greatest philosopher? For me, he fails in this aspect. And it was Pythagoras. Everybody must have by-hearted the Pythagoras theorem when we were very young. He says, there's a good principle which has created order, light and man, and a bad principle which has created class, darkness and woman. But the irony is, his theorem has been much popularized by a female by name Aristoclea. What if he be a great mathematician? He fails in me in this aspect of having a typical patriarchal mind. And come to St. Thomas Aquinas, he says, as regards the individual nature, woman is defective and misbegotten. This patriarchal mindset need not be only existing in men, it can also be existing in women also. Queen Elizabeth I, of whom all of us revere and respect in so many other aspects, when she was to address a troop of army men for a victory to celebrate in the battlefront of Tilbury, she has proudly announced, though I may have the weak body of a woman, I'm proud to state that I have a strong heart and stomach of a man, that too like the King of England. Why should we want to have a stomach and heart of a man? So a queen is not an exception to this patriarchal mindset. So for me, empowerment is Thandai Mayamakkappatta. Patriarchy is the word. The conditioning for which we had been tuned for so many years, we have to break it up and prove ourselves as just women or women in this world.
So very well said. Sowmya, does your blood boil when people say, what is the need for feminism?
I mean, absolutely. So first of all, I really want to thank India Today Conclave and all my lovely panelists as well. Yes, I mean, it's my blood boils, but at the same time, I think we've come a long journey. Because at the end of the day, feminism is about equal rights. It's not just about women. It's about equal opportunity, equality. It's about each and every woman having the same opportunity as men as well. And I think we have fought a lot of battles. And we come from the country where we've had a women prime minister as well. A long time ago, when we are celebrating a vice president in another country. But I think it's every day is a battle. I think as women politicians, every day I have to battle. I have to work 10 times more harder. I have to deal with, like ma'am was saying, patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, mansplaining, you name it. But I think, like everything, women are breaking the glass ceiling in every field.
Khushbu, do you think politics is a man's world?
No, nothing. Nothing is a man's world. It's equal. Why only men should be given a credit to lead the country or to be at the forefront of political field? I think you have women all over the world making a mark for themselves. And I'm a feminist myself, but I'm not a bra-burning feminist. I believe that women should have the equality, but I do not like the term saying that the minute a woman achieves success, oh, it's a breaking the glass ceiling. Why these terms are never used with men? Why?
Because they're always there.
No, I'm saying with women, the day we stop saying that we are going to break the glass ceiling, I think we have arrived. We have to stop making ourselves saying that, oh, I'm going to achieve, I'm going to do this, I'm going to break the glass ceiling. No, I think I just have to go on, keep working, and say I am equal to any man in this room or anybody out there on the streets, and I'm going to make a mark for myself because I trust myself, I believe in myself, and I'm extremely confident of what I want to do in life. And that is what it ends. I think it should never be saying that I am going to be making a mark by being equal to another man. No, I am already way ahead of any man. Any man. I think, you look at it, you talk about the country, it's Bharat Mata, Hamari Janmabhoomi, Hamari mother tongue. That is how so everything is about women. But it's just that what Thamizhachi was saying about the patriarchy mindset, I think we have come a long way. We wouldn't be here on this panel if we were still walking around with the patriarchy mindset. Yes, there are certain places where men love to prove that they are much more stronger than women, but I see their weakness in that. I see their complete weakness because they know very well, they accept the fact that women are stronger emotionally. When it comes to doing a work, women can multitask, women can achieve if she sets her mind on something. And it's just that the men's, when they have their insecurities, when they are very much aware that they cannot compete with women, that's when they jump into this patriarchy mindset or maligning or assassination of the character. This is why they jump to these resorts because they know they cannot compete with any woman for that matter.
When we talk about women in politics, I see 4 hugely accomplished, successful women on the stage with me. But is it easier said than done? Khushbu, I want you to answer that. About, if there's a woman out there, a woman who is, someone from a rural background, is it easy for her to reach a politician's level, to enter politics even?
No, definitely not. It's not easy for her because she has been brought up in an atmosphere where it has been fed in her mind that she is inferior to men. It has been told to her that when she gets married, she goes into the new home, she has to adjust and compromise. It has been told to her while she was being brought up as a girl that there are ways that this is how the girls behave, this is how the boys behave. There have been rules in her own household, in her maternal home, where they have told her that whatever said and done, you have to abide by the rules set by the society. And that is where the problem starts. The day at home we start treating girls and boys equally, we will not have this problem. Yes, politically you have this problem because I think all 4 of us successful in our own field, especially Thamizhachi Thangapandian, she is the MP. Though she comes from a very, very not conservative, very, very broad-minded background, her brothers, her family, everything we know about it. She is very well-read, very highly educated. But even then, I'm sure she would have understood that when it comes to politics, We definitely do have certain section of men where they think it's not right for a woman to succeed. We cannot take orders from women, and that's a basic problem. Politically, most of the men, they do not like taking orders from men, and that is why we actually look up to Indira Gandhi ji, or we look up to Jayalalitha, because we say that, okay, these were two women who were actually men in the man's world.
Apsara, you were someone who was, handpicked by Jayalalitha to enter politics and thereby ensure that, you end that stereotypes and give opportunities to transgenders, put them on the same platform. Do you think it takes one woman to lift another up?
Absolutely, to kind of use the phrase break the glass ceiling. I think when women break the glass ceiling, we shouldn't fix it back on. I think we need to kind of empower other women to, empower them to come to seats of power, to positions of power, and give them opportunity. I think a lot of times women enter a certain sphere, a certain seat, or certain circle of power, and they forget that there's an entire sisterhood out there that needs that upliftment. So it's important, especially for me, when I discuss gender issues and gender justice, for me it's very important that we find meaningful places for transgender women, not just at really tokenistic photo op kind of moments, but also at the block, district, panchayat, and state level, because only then, in their rural areas, in their setting, can they come up and be a part of politics.
Ms. Thamizhachi, what do you think helps? If we see women in politics, what change can you bring about for other women who want to enter the political fray?
Just to sensitize them, especially as my friend Khushbu has stated. See, when we talk about opportunities, there's a certain difference when you talk from a privileged class. Because India has this peculiar problem of caste. The European countries have this division as, like race and rich people, poor people, or religion. But the peculiar cure and the worst problem we have is caste. So when we speak in a privileged position like women can achieve anything or we are on par with men, we have to be very careful who speaks and on which platform she's standing and which is given the right or the privilege to speak. So when we come to that, we have to sensitize the not so privileged class of women to give them a boost of self-confidence. I come from a rural background. I come from my native places in the southern part of Tamil Nadu, which is a typical village, Mallanginaru. It is a dry, arid soil. Most of the time it depends upon the rains for a rich agricultural outcome. When I come from such rural background, I get my strength from those Karisakattu women, from those rural women who brace themselves upon the difficulties life poses on them. So most of their husbands are drunkards. Most of the women need to support their family as lone working women. Despite all these, I can see brave Karisalkattu women. My paternal grandmother, my aunts, my chinnamas, my ammatas, my appatas, they taught me self-respect even though they're not graduates. Most of them wouldn't have even stepped on the footsteps of any school at all. So what has given them that confidence? So self-respect movement, I always look up to women who are the pioneers of the self-respect movement. Movalu Ramamridam Ammayar, Vaisu Manjula, Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, who have sensitized the underprivileged women who come from the lower strata of society of the oppressed classes that you can achieve. So empowerment needs to be started from that startup society. Because even see, rapes happen throughout. You know the statistics, every other second, how many women are being subjected to sexual assaults. But when a scheduled caste woman is being subjected to that, it's a different story. It has its own political connotations in that. So it has other aspects, perspectives, when it has been done to a scheduled caste or to a underprivileged women coming from the underprivileged section of society. So they need to be sensitized. And of course, men also need to be supportive in that case.
So it needs to start from the grassroots.
Yes, of course.
Sowmya, do you think that in politics, for a woman to reach a leadership role is very, very difficult and it's a huge challenge?
I would say yes and no.
Essentially my question is, do you feel your male politicians have a problem taking commands from a woman leader?
There definitely is sexism, misogyny and patriarchy, like we were talking earlier. But I think at the end of the day, it's things are changing. I mean, compared to how things were in the past. But we still have a long way to go. I mean, why is that we still don't have, we're 50%, 49-50% of population in the world. Why is that representation of women is just 12% in the parliament? In my own state, we're just about 4%. I'm not sure how much over here in Tamil Nadu, but that's definitely not even 10%. I think at the end of the day, it's about as and when at every single level, be it Gram Panchayat, ZP, municipality, assembly, parliament, I think that there has to be representation. And I think as and when that happens, I think things will change. And of course, it is much more harder because I have to work. In fact, I happen to be the only female MLA in my own city. And we're just like 10 out of 225. It's every single day I have to kind of, prove myself. But of course, I haven't, if not for parents who would have believed that her daughter couldn't do anything, be it even an elected representative, I don't think I would be sitting over here. So I think at the end of the day, it takes each and every mother and father to make that decision that my girl child is as better, if not as good, if not better, than the male child.
Sowmya brought up a point, and Thamizhachi ma'am, there is always the question about reservation. Why nothing's been done to ensure reservation in Parliament? This is a subject that's been brought up in 1996. We're still talking about it. The sense I get is that all political parties have a consensus. When you talk to them in the face, they say, we're for it. We're for women's reservation. And yet, it's never happened. I don't have to mention that, all our representatives here are from different political parties. I saw how all of you stood here, hugged each other. So I know you all have that close bond. Beyond the politics, why is it that we're so hesitant on going ahead and ensuring the most basic step of reservation?
See, reservation is a birthright. It's not that something which needs to be given on a platter to us from men. In fact, we all need to have 50% reservation. That's a birthright. And from time immemorial, for more than, like how many years we have been fighting for this 33%. Even Rwanda, the most, upcoming underdeveloped country, has a much more higher rate of women parliamentarians. And statistics are on the rise, showing that the underdeveloped countries are concentrating more on bringing women representation in the decision-making chairs. And it is a sad plight that, see, it was passed in the Rajya Sabha and it was faced with much stiff resistance in the Lok Sabha. And you must have all witnessed the scenario, how it was, even some member tore the paper also. So it is a sad, that is why I always stress on this patriarchal setup. How does a man think like that? Why does he think that it is something that we need to give a woman when it is our birthright? When I just expressed it as our birthright, there was a big aghast also. They can't even stomach that phrase. So this is the resistance, and cutting across all party lines. It's high time we have to work towards it. As you said, it's a healthy thing.
What I find unfortunate, Khushbu, is that men have to, or get the right to decide about women's reservation. And they are the ones, essentially, who will decide whether there's reservation in Parliament for women. While you, again, have all of these parties coming together saying, we're for it, we want reservation. You never see it going through. Do you think it's unfortunate that men decide women's fate in politics?
It's very unfortunate that it hasn't come in power in the Parliament yet. We're talking about 50%. We say that it's a birthright. But why are we allowing the men to decide whether we deserve it or not? That's what I don't understand. It's your birthright. Take it. Why are we giving that platform, or we putting men on that pedestal to decide what is my birthright? Why are we allowing men to decide that you have to bring in a law which is going to give me my birthright? Haven't we, over these years, literally pushed men on that pedestal every time and said, you decide what I deserve, you decide what I need, you decide what I have to do, you decide what I have to eat, you decide where I have to go, you decide what I have to wear. I am saying the men, we do not give them the platform. Why are we giving them so much of delight, the pleasure of deciding what I have to do? As a woman, it's my birthright. I start my daughters here and they know very well. The rules are no different. It's the rules that apply to my brother's kids, his boys, the same rules apply to them. We have not brought up our daughters as saying that this is what your timeline is, this is what you have to do, this is what you don't have to do. They are free to do what they want to do. It's just that be conscious of what you're doing. You have to take the responsibility. If something goes wrong, you have to be brave enough to accept that you have gone wrong and be confident that you're not going to do it again. I wouldn't be here if I had handed over my reins of my life to my husband. It's a marriage of equality. It's a marriage of understanding. My husband does not tell me you don't do this, because I do not give him the right to decide on what I have to do. He is supportive of my decisions. He is supportive when he thinks if something is wrong. He just voices his opinions and says, I think this is wrong, but the final choice is yours. I think why we women give that opportunity to men, where somewhere they have this sadistic pleasure of saying that I am going to decide what woman has to do. I do not believe in that. It's your birthright, you fight for it, you win it. How you do it? Let's all, irrespective of the political parties, let all women in the parliament come together, go out on the streets and say this needs to be done because this is my birthright. And let's see if that happens or not. Bring in, we always have, candlelight march and this and that, everything. Why we women, the parliamentarians, don't come out and fight for it? Why single-handedly Thamizhachi Thangapandian has to fight in the parliament? Bring all the women. I mean, we always keep talking about it. We keep fighting about it. We have an argument. We have a discussion. But it's status quo. I'm saying, let's come out. Let us all be on the streets. We, from different parties, are ready to support you. We are there. We are not the parliamentarians, but we will be there to support you and say that we women need to come together to take this forward, because we women deserve, and it's a birthright, to have equal rights as the men.
I know Apsara and Sowmya want to make a point. I just want to quickly get a response also from Thamizhachi ma'am. What's wanting really in the response to this lack of reservation in Parliament? Are women MPs simply not coming together, speaking one voice on this?
No,
is there a movement that's required?
No. As Khushbu has beautifully stated, it's a single woman voice only. But when it comes to, like voicing out in the Parliament, again, breaking the party lines is a little difficult. Their principles or whatever it is. See, for example, why we are all very much particular about this is when a bill comes mainly on issues regarding women. For example, the medical termination of pregnancy, MTP bill comes. A woman has to decide. The decision shouldn't be taken by men sitting on the panel. Woman has to decide about her body. Doesn't she have the right to even if it is because of a voluntary sex if she had, and if she decides to abort it, why does a court or the government has to interfere in that? So all these things, if we are in the decision-making chairs, we can do it properly, rightfully. So still, I think women are, they are in one solidarity. They will definitely support for this particular reservation. It's my maybe a high hope, but as we all expressed here, I look forward to that day when we all parliamentarians, cutting across all party lines, stand up in parliament and then voice single-handedly as one woman representing India, that reservation ought to be brought, bill ought to be brought, and we will aspire to get 50%, which is our birthright.
That is a day we're all looking forward to. That's a day history will be made in Parliament as well. Apsara, you wanted to make a point. You know, from this conversation, what's very, very clear to me is that this is not a level playing field.
Absolutely, and I think I agree with both Khushbu and Thamizhachi that we need to have a significant lobby of women cutting across party lines, because what politicians care about is the crass calculation of vote bank. And within the parties, we have women attacking each other, women making personal attacks, allowing men from their parties to make personal attacks on others. And I think women need to speak in one voice for each other, not about ideology, but about for each other in terms of empowerment, in terms of their human rights and dignity. I think once we kind of stand up for our dignity and rights, I think, and we'll be able to stand up for the whole gender. I think women have to be a significant vote bank in Parliament. As I say, vote bank not politically, but as a gender. Yeah. But also in saying that, I must applaud our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. We have Nirmala Sitharaman, who's held portfolios like finance and defense, which are essentially male bastions. And I think he's changed the perception of what women can do. And Mr. Edappadi Palanichami, our Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, the way he's brought in women at every level, and even giving transgender women the national platform to be a spokesperson on a channel representing a ruling government. I think all these go to show that inclusive leadership by men is also coming across in our country, and I think for the better in 2021, with the formation of BJP and AIADMK again, we'll have the continuation.
Okay. Clear statement there from Apsara. Sowmya, you wanted to make a point as well.
I mean, just a reality check. I mean, it's very unfortunate. At the end of the day, we're all on the same page. We all want reservation, for women. It's very sad that it's 2021 and yet our representation is just so less. I think over here it's 9% and the parliament is 12%. It's been passed in the Rajya Sabha already. Why is that in the past 7 years, the BJP government has, majority? Why is that they're not passing it? So I would really like to, pass on this.
I don't want to make this whole, I don't want to make this
pass on
whole
this to my colleagues as well. In fact,
Sowmya, okay, we will get Khushbu to respond to your question also, but let's keep this non-political. As I mentioned, we're all women standing here, and that's our identity right now.
No,
on this
in
platform.
a sense, I think as women, irrespective of political parties, I think all of us are pushing it. But at the end of the day, we need to pass this in the Lok Sabha. It hasn't been brought up. We've had all kinds of laws that has been passed in the recent past, which hasn't been necessary. But why is that? In fact, Nagarapalika and Panchayat was actually thanks to Rajiv Gandhi, and we've given from Congress, we've given unconditional support that we will, and we have support the women's reservation bill as well. Why is that? It's been 7 years and we still don't have the women's It's not 50%, at least 33%. Why? When is that going to happen?
Thank you, Sowmya. I'm not going to make it political, but what you couldn't achieve in 60 years, how can we achieve in 6 years? Give us some time. We'll definitely do it. One step at a time, baby steps. We are trying to get things organized in the country. What we have seen was completely misdone, and we need to set things right. The country comes first. The people living below poverty line comes first. The GDP growth of the country comes first. The armed forces come first. Women do have a very, very powerful role, and like Apsara very rightly said, it's only in this government we have seen. We had people like Sushma Swaraji, Nirmala Sitharamanji, you have seen Smriti Irani, all leading from the front and giving a very clear message that this government cares for women. You have Beti Bachao Andolan, all that. So we are taking it forward, but let's not make it political. I'm saying whether I'm here representing BJP, and I said, yes, we need to pass this. And I'm saying we all need to come together. Irrespective whether it is Sonia Gandhi ji, whether it is Priyanka ji, whether it is Smriti ji or Nirmala ji or anybody, or any one of us here, whoever represents the people, the women in the parliament or any of the political platforms, I think we need to come together and speak in one voice, speak one single language, and that is we need what we rightly deserve. That should be the baseline, and not whether she belongs to DMK, she belongs to AIADMK, you're from Congress, I'm from BJP. No. When it comes to women of this country, we do not belong to any political parties. That's a party we have chosen to be in. But as a woman, we belong to one category, and that is women who are the most biggest strength of this country, the backbone of this country, I would say. This country wouldn't flourish if we don't have women speaking their minds, which is extremely important. And let's not bring any political agenda or,
it's not a political agenda, ma'am. I was just curious when,
yes,
I said, that we're going to have the political will to pass this women's reservation
again, it's going
bill.
to go into an argument of you didn't do it, I could do, how can I do it? Let's not get into that. We are going to do it, and when we promise something, we do fulfill the promises. And that's a promise made by our Honorable Prime Minister, that we will fulfill this and we will bring it in order, and there are no two ways about it.
Okay, I'm not going to let this descend into a political blame game. Sure,
add,
Apsara, go ahead.
I think when we have a gender discussion about women power, and I think about talking about women's rights, and we're talking about men deciding for us, I think panels like this should also ask the uncomfortable question to men. I think panels on women
agree.
should have men being asked these questions, that you have this many women in your party who are capable, intelligent, articulate, sensible, who can have vote banks. Why don't you give them a chance? I think you should ask political leaders who are coming to your panel yesterday and today. We had many leaders. You should have asked them those questions.
No, I 100% agree. Thamizhachi ma'am, do you think that now for political parties, I see many clapping here, I may just pull one man up to the stage and ask him to answer that question as well. But Thamizhachi ma'am, do you feel that very often for political parties, it's about that photo op, sending across a message as far as optics are concerned that, look, we have certain number of women in the party, we're very inclusive. But when it comes down to it, they don't really promote women.
See, way back in 1989, it was Dr. Kalaignar who has made it legal, that it is the legal right of a woman to inherit her parents' property. First state throughout India, he was the first one to bring out. And 30% in the jobs, reservation for women in the jobs, and again in the local body administration also 33%. So that's how the DMK party has been pioneer. Of course, the seeds were sown by the Dravidian movement, and it was whenever Dr. Kalaignar came to power, he made it a point that his first step was to give empowerment and equal rights to women. Because when you put a signature as a chief minister regarding the rights, equal rights of a woman, making it legal, it actually empowers not merely the rights, as well as it's a very great booster, especially for the scheduled caste women, as well as for the people from the backward class, giving them the engineering education free of costs, all these things, every consequent steps in a slow and steady progress. And this is not, as all of us agree, a stage to flaunt all those schemes. But slow and steady progress, and every time whenever we come to power, particularly the Dravidian parties, we make it a point that we give equal opportunities to women. So when coming to the representation we have given out 12 seats and to women, and out of that 7 women from the scheduled castes have been given proper representation. So you have to look into this aspect of giving representation to the women from the underprivileged section of the society. That is where our party makes a great stress upon, because you have to give opportunities to those women who have not entered the portals of power yet. Still, it is a huge fight. Still, AIIMS is not yet open to us. Still, IIT gates are not yet open to us. So you have to start from there. And then it is a steady progress. And whenever our party has an opportunity, it has actually put stress upon giving equal opportunities. And still, I would like to quote Robert Frost lines, miles to go, miles to go. It is a long journey and it is miles to go.
I tend to agree with you. And Apsara, do you think that right now, for a woman to be successful in politics, she needs to be someone from a wealthy background, someone with influence? Is that what it takes to be successful in politics for a woman right now?
I don't think so. Look at so many examples across our country, across party lines. We have women who have been Maoist leaders in the past. We have Dalit women. We have, people like Salma from the DMK. We have people like so many people in the AIADMK who come from the grassroots level. We have Valarmadi Akka herself, who's come from the very, very, very humble beginnings. We have a chief minister today who encourages women from scheduled caste, from the backward classes, from transgender women. I think you don't need to be a woman with wealth. You need to be a woman with vision and warmth. I think people relate to that. I think wealth works to a certain extent. But I think the electorate, the people of Tamil Nadu especially, relate to the person and the persona.
Khushbu, you've been an actor also. Between the film industry and politics, a difficult one. Between the two industries, which do you think is more welcoming for women?
I'm sorry for being biased. I would definitely say films. I think it's only a cinema where they don't ask you to fill up a form, where they say that what's your gender, your caste, your community, your religion, your education qualifications, your background, your past working experience. You don't have to fill up anything. Here, even if a nominee, any candidate has to file, even for assembly or parliament, you have to fill up all these forms. Yes. So it's movies you don't have. Movies, it's purely dependent on how talented you are. Politics in movies do happen. I'm not going to deny that. Groupism do happen. Or I would say there's a new word which has come up, nepotism talking about. But I think it's finally the talent which wins. And even in politics, whichever background you come from, you have a very large shoe to fit in. If you belong to somebody's son, if you are so-and-so's relative, who has definitely been famous and done something good for the society, and if you come from that affluent family, the comparisons are bound to happen. Will you be able to fulfill the amount of good work this person has done? Will you be able to do that? Politics is actually more out in the open. Yes, films do make headline news, but that's very, I would say, very trivial, very, very little. They go on. But when it comes to politics, we say we are politicians, and I always say that when we say we are politicians, you're elected by the people, that means you are a public servant, which most of us forget. Public servant means public has chosen you to serve them. We love to put this word next to us, I'm a politician. No, you're a public servant. Take your service to the people. That's why people have chosen you. And that is why you have people actually going and watching every move, every word, what you say, what you do. Because you are accountable for that. If you do not serve the people who have chosen you, the party which you belong to, what the party promises, and if you're not able to take that, even me as just a normal BJP worker, if I'm not able to take the party's schemes and the policies which are here to help the poor and the needy, if I'm not able to take it to them, explain it to them that this is how they can benefit, then I fail completely. I do not have any rights to be on this political platform. So being in films is much easier than being in politics, because in politics, it's a duty. Cinema is not duty. That's your profession. Politics is not your profession. No politician can ever say that, oh, what's your profession? I'm a politician. No, you're not. Politics is not about being a profession of yours. Politics is about what you want to do for the society, how you want to take the country forward, how safe you want to make sure that the next generation gets a better life. If you have been through problems, make sure that the next generation does not go through the same problems. And that is the prime duty of a politician, of the people chosen by this country and who have voted them to power. So I think films, the politics is there, but it's lesser. It's easier for you to survive than in this political arena.
So, from an actor to a politician, is it easy? Was it the transition easy? Because where I'm coming to is the question that I asked Apsara also. If you're a known face, if you're someone who is established, as you were, is it easier to enter politics then? And thereby, does it become more difficult for someone else who's from a rural background, no history of politics, not established at all, to enter politics?
No, I completely agree. Probably it was easier for me because my face is well known. I can draw crowds. People would come to see me. People would come to see to hear what I speak. But having said that, it makes it far more difficult for me to make it big because, like we all have been discussing for the last 30 minutes about men, they get into this complete inferiority complex mode. They get intimidated. At the same time, I don't blame even the other workers, because here I am who has achieved so much, who have seen the fame. I am there right in the front page. I am there right for the party at the front, on the front, and working for them. There have been party people who have been there in the party for many, many years, struggling, trying to find a foothold, and here I'm given a platform. It makes it easy, but it makes it tough, because if you do not deliver, then you are literally thrown out. Then you are literally targeted, that you have not promised, you have not done what was promised. So I think, you are aware that the kind of trolls and the kind of people who think it's their birthright to abuse us on social platforms is because you have a name. They wouldn't do it to anybody else. Here I have a name, so the responsibility is much more than any other normal person, and that's why it makes it doubly difficult for me to work harder and the way I want to work. Face value is there, but that is not my ticket to success. I need to work doubly hard.
Sowmya, do you think that women politicians are also easily targeted on social media? Do you think that trolls tend to target women politicians a lot more than your male counterparts?
I think it's not just women politicians. I think women in generally are targeted much more on social media. It's become terrible, especially in the past couple of years, because of on social media, the kind of negativity, toxicity, and the kind of language. It's because probably if that person was in front of the person, they wouldn't have said that. It's because probably of this anonymity. If they feel that, in fact, I really have to, I admire Maneka Gandhi ma'am. She started this thing called as, I think hashtag I am trolled or something else, but I don't know what happened to that. At the end of the day, I think it's really sad that, people, if you disagree with something, I think probably it roots from patriarchy. That if you disagree with a woman, you want to kind of, make her keep quiet. Suppress her. And you do that online as well. And the kind of, it's just really nasty. It probably happens, I'm sure all of us have faced that. And I don't know. I really don't know what's really going to happen because it's extremely terrible.
The favorite button is the mute button, I'm sure, for all of us.
But have you noticed that when men are attacked, it's always they're corrupt or whatever. It's about a policy, it's about something else. But a woman is always attacked for her character. I think the first thing that men want to touch, or abusers or the trollers or whatever you call them want to hit upon, is to kind of rattle you and send you back to the kitchen. And I think women of today have to tell them, I'm not going to be rattled by that. You are no judge of my character. I define my own modesty. I define my own dignity. And we need to, not just the mute and block button, I think we need to give as good as we get or even better. Not in that language, not in those terms, but I think we need to stand up for ourselves on social media.
So well said, so well said. Thamizhachi ma'am, do you feel that it's because of a certain stereotype that's been built, a box around which a woman has to fit in? If she comes out of it, question character.
True, very true, especially when you make your debut into politics. As my friend said, it's not about women exclusively in politics, but women in general are prone for such attacks. But when you just make your entry into politics, they will tend to just pick up your physical appearance. You're not supposed to be that much aesthetic. People will come and ask me, even after becoming an MP, why do you sport flowers like this? Why do you wear big jhumkas? And why do you wear jingling glass bangles? Of course, I choose my occasion to wear that. But what's wrong in being a little bit aesthetic? And why should you have to, go according to their norms. So the moment you are in the public eye, they want you to transform according to their opinions. Denying your rights to be beautiful for your own happiness. And since you are an MP, since you are into the public political field, you're not, to sacrifice all those things, your little bit of jewelry, your little bit of statement or whatever it is. See, nowhere have you ever seen Aung San Suu Kyi without any flowers? Only in India, I think, women are being targeted. And as my dear friend Apsara has stated, character assassination also, the first thing. And also, they will come and ask you this question: how do you manage your household as well as your political professional life? I'll always ask them, have you ever asked a male member of parliament the same question? No, there are certain stereotyped of questions as well as expectations when it comes to a woman as she steps into a public life. It's always, because தமிழர்களுடைய அந்த உடை, அவர்களுடைய அந்த அழகுணர்ச்சி என்பது காலம் காலமாக 3000 ஆண்டுகளாக தொடர்ந்து வருகின்றது. சந்தனமோ மலர்களோ உங்களுக்கான வகையில் உங்களை ஆரோக்கியமாக அழகுபடுத்திக் கொள்வது, it's part of Tamilian sensibility. And just because you step into a public arena, you're not supposed to, sacrifice.
The moment I knew I was going to be doing this panel, the first rule I told myself, I will not ask that question about work-life balance, how do you do it all. I made that the #1 rule for this debate because, it sets such a bad precedent. If you don't ask it to the men, don't ask it to the women.
I have a point to make. Sorry.
No, but I love when this question is asked to me because, as I said at the beginning of the show, men are way ahead, women are way ahead of men. They can multitask. Men cannot do it. You give one job to men and they're like, you give them one job at home. Tea potte veinge mudiyadu. Kitchen will be a mess. And I don't have any qualms in saying that my husband does not know how to switch on a gas or even operate a microwave oven. He does not know, and he is proud about it. He does not know anything.
This is so true what you're saying.
Somebody asked me, how do you manage?
No, but can I tell you something? It's very unfair to say women are born multitaskers. That's not true. We are forced to become multitaskers.
No.
So
we are born multitaskers. Why do you say you're forced to do it?
Because you're forced into doing so many duties that you're forced to become a multitasker.
I enjoy waking up early in the morning, making tea for my family, then heading out for my work, coming back, making sure that the lunch is on time, making sure the dinner is prepared. I love doing that, but I never give up on what I want to do or what I want to achieve.
Exactly.
I have a time for myself. I know this is what I want to do. And I love multitasking because I know no man can ever match up to my multitasking abilities, and I'm very proud of that.
The message is to each their own. That's what it's about. Yes, Apsara.
Akshita, I think what Thamizhachi said earlier, I agree with completely. I think women are multitaskers, as even Khushbu said, but I feel also it's so much easier for a male politician because there's always a woman to lock up the house, cook for them, take care. A woman politician, when you have no support of a man, to lock up your house when you have to run, to do your grocery shopping, to do whatever, you don't have those support systems. It's doubly harder for a woman to be in politics. Because, men are proud of the fact that they can't do household work. And even if they're at home and sit at home husbands, they don't want to do it. So I think women coming out are not just multitaskers, but they're multi-achievers, and I think they deserve a better platform in politics.
The most basic, at least, representation. We've run out of time, but I'm not sure if you've noticed, but through the course of this entire discussion, Thamizhachi ma'am kept referring to poets, kept giving us stanzas. It's because she is a poet herself. So to sum up this entire conversation about rights of women, about ensuring that, we ensure adequate representation of women, give them the rights, give them the opportunities they deserve. If you could give us a few lines of any poem that you believe would be apt for this.
விட்டு விடுதலையாகி நிற்பாய் சிட்டு குருவியை போலே மகாகவி பாரதியாருடைய வார்த்தைகள். பாவேந்தர் பாரதிதாசன் said, வன்மை உயர்வு மாந்தர் நலமெல்லாம் பெண்மையினால் உண்டு பெண்ணால் உண்டு. மாந்தர்னா அதில் it includes the human race. So your power, strength, positivity, development, everything is possible only because of women. So in the as soon as I wake up in the morning, when I look up at the sun and get energy from that, doing my Surya Namaskaram or whatever it is, I remember Mahakavi Bharathiya's this one sentence, Vittu Vidudalayaagi Nirpai. And one more beautiful little anecdote, because I always look up my Karisal Kaatu, my South Indian, my rural women as my example. So, I come from a place wherein heat, the summer is the tone of my soil. Always, 7 months of the year, scorching summer is the tone of my place, always. So we never complain about summer. Summer and sweat are part of our skin. So when a Chennai, if sometimes they ask you, where do you go for your summer? I'll always say to my village. To my village of dust and sweat. When I was just sharing this experience to one of my fellow Semburnam Akka, her name is Semburnam. Semburnam is a woman, one who sports a big bindi. So she is a flower-selling woman. She always sports a very big bindi. Even after she lost her husband, she used to sport a big bindi. When I was just having a conversation with her, she has never gone to school or any sort of formal education. I said, Akka, poo vikkiravanga ellarme poduva vandu perisa pottu vechu, any significance in that? If you are a widow or you supposed to sacrifice or that. She told me, நான் பிறந்ததிலிருந்தே இவ்வளோ பெரிய பொட்டு வச்சிருக்கேன். That's why I'm called as Semburnam Akka. Why should I have to sacrifice it when I become a widow? Then I asked her, எப்பவாவது உனக்கு உங்க ஹஸ்பண்டை உனக்கு பிடிக்காம போயிருக்கா? பிடிக்காம போறதுக்கு என் ஹஸ்பண்ட் என்ன, வெயில் உனக்கு எப்பயாவது பிடிக்காம போயிருக்கா? I asked her. வெயில் பிடிக்காம போறதுக்கு வெயில் என்ன எனக்கு வீட்டுக்காரனா? வெயில் is so close to me. Veil is part of my skin. Of course, I had hated my husband. I must have disowned him so many times in my life. But veil is so closer to me. So I always, whenever I go through, the scorching sun, I remember these words. So Mahakavi Bharathiya's, Pavendra Bharatidasan and Semburnam Akka's, these words are my lifetime punchlines from which I get energy, I get motivated, and I'm happy that I'm able to share these lines and a part of my experience with you. Thank you.
What a lovely and empowering conversation this has been. I hope for all the girls who are watching, they've been inspired now to demand what they deserve. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us here on the India Today Conclave South.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.